Good morning, this is Heather Hoffman, and I'm here to share this fun floral card with you today using lots of reverse confetti dye inks to do kind of an oldie but goodie technique. When I learned it, it was called rock and roll, so it's kind of using two different ink colors. I'm starting off with a little tag that I cut using see-through tags and the Sun and Sea 6x6 pattern paper. That's what I used as color inspiration for this card. And I'm combining just some dual tones of reverse confetti dye inks, shades that go together, just a little bit lighter and a little bit darker shades that I can use together. I'm going to stamp lots of the fun florals from Bold Blooms, which is one of the more recent releases that I hadn't had a chance to play with yet. I'm pulling out some of the leaf and solid floral images to start off. This is what I'm going to use to begin the technique and to use those two tones of stamping. I'm using a clear block. That's the easiest way to do this technique. I'm sure you could do it with a Misty, but I really like it's so easy and quick just to do it on a clear block. So I've started with that large floral, and I'm using peach and tangerine dye inks. And I'm starting off with, I stamp it in the peach, and then it's a little hard to see in the video, but get a good solid image and then kind of rock that around in that deeper color. Because these shades are complementary, you're not going to notice any mixing on your ink pad, especially since you're basically starting with the lighter color and then rolling it around in the darker. You're really not going to get much transference of ink. It's a little hard to see to begin with there because these are dye inks. And if you haven't used dye inks a lot, they actually dye and color the paper. So as you stamp them on, they're going to look a little blotchy and some of that until the ink is able to dry, to sink into the paper and dry. And so as they dry, it's going to really smooth out and you're going to get a much neater effect. So if you haven't used dye inks before and you're playing with them to begin with, don't despair as you begin to stamp because it really is going to smooth and level off. So the second color there I did with the yellow was Buttercup and Sunshine. And then the blue flowers, I used navy blue and royal purple. And as it turned out, there wasn't a lot of variation in those colors. I probably would have chosen a lighter one if I was doing it again, but I liked the finished effect there. And then I stamped all of the different leaves. And for that, I used lime and avocado. And I think that was my favorite combo, just for the shading that you got on the leaves there. I thought that was super fun. And there you can see as they start to dry, you can just get a little hint of how they're going to look. Now I'm going to come in with some of the more detailed images from the same stamp set, the Bold Blooms, and I'm using Stormy dye ink, which is just a great deep gray. It's just a little bit of a softer effect than using a black or too dark of an ink. It doesn't really show up on those blue ones much, but I went ahead and did it anyway. You can see it in real life a little more than on screen, but finishing off there the last little bit of those. So that just adds kind of an element of detail to the ones that have that coordinating detail image. I went ahead and die cut all of those with the coordinating Bold Blooms confetti cuts. And then I'm going to pull out that tag that I already die cut and just kind of start arranging the florals where I want. I'm going to use that window in there to stamp my sentiment. So I'm kind of arranging the florals around that window. And just playing with them, tucking them in here, tucking them in there until I'm happy with the way that they're laid out. I actually thought that I'd stamped and die cut too many images, and as it turned out, I ended up using every last one of them. I was kind of surprised by how that worked. Then one of my favorite Jennifer McGuire tricks, I pulled out my press and seal to pick up that whole image. Now that I've got it all in place, I didn't want to mess it up by picking everything up and trying to remember where I had everything. So this allowed me to quickly add some foam adhesive to the back of the tag, and then the parts of the flowers that tuck behind that tag, I went ahead and added just some regular adhesive to those because I want those to go straight on the tag for that little bit of dimension. And then once I stuck the tag down, I peeled it carefully back up with those florals still intact. Now I can turn those over, add a little bit of liquid glue adhesive, and then very carefully press that right back in place. And then you just carefully pull off that press and seal. Since the liquid adhesive takes a little longer to dry, you want to make sure not peel those back off with the adhesive. So I just kind of reach under as I peel off and hold them in place. Now I chose which sentiment I wanted to place in there. And the great thing about doing the sentiment here fairly quickly is that that adhesive is still a little bit damp, so I can still adjust those florals just a touch to be able to fit my sentiment in there. If I'd really been thinking, I probably would have stamped my sentiment in the middle first before I assembled it all with the florals, but this ended up working good too, and then I could make sure that my sentiment was visible around the middle of the florals. Now, since this is a tag, I wanted to add some texture to the top there, so I went ahead and pulled some jute string out and just threaded that through the top, and then I kind of tucked it around so it looped behind one of those leaves, and I'm adding a little liquid adhesive just so that that'll dry and be stable and stay in place. And then the final finishing touch, it just felt like it needed a little something else, so I pulled out some enamel dots from my stash. You could do sequins or jewels or whatever kind of bling you like. I guess Nuvo drops or crystal drops would also work. I kind of liked the colors of these enamel dots that I had, and I felt like they kind of matched and blended in really well. So I just kind of tucked a few of those here and there in coordinating colors, just to give a little bit of extra little sprinkle of fun. There you go. I hope you give this technique a try. I hope you enjoyed. It's a fun way to mix and match your inks and kind of get a different, almost a watercolor effect on those florals. Thanks so much for coming by. Have a wonderful day.